That was the moment where I found my power. I think as humans, we are all superheroes, but we need to get ourselves in situations. And what I mean is, we need to embrace exiting our comfort zone in order to get ourselves in a position to essentially find our cape.
Hmm. You just need to pick up on the vibration that everybody else is putting out. And as soon as you do that, you can't help but kind of tune yourself to what everybody else is vibing with.
That's it.
Mm. So, from there, you talk about that mile 40, and it was that 40th mile that you're like, man, I do not think I can go any longer. I just want to go to the finish line, call my mom and just go on home. But you kept on going mile after mile after mile and celebrating along the way. And, I know just based on your, knowing your story a little bit, that became such a pillar for not just who you are, but really the message that you've been trying to give to the world. And through your Mile 40 podcast, through writing your book, talk a little bit more just about what that mile 40 has meant, and also what that has allowed. I know you've been raising money for this. You have a massive aspiration of raising a ton more. Of just like, talk about what that journey has been like, because the reason why I asked that question, there's many people right now who are seeking something more, right? Maybe they're doing great in their corporate job, or maybe they're not doing great in their corporate job. I know for myself, for a long time, hey, I was getting great results. From the outside looking in, people are like, hey, you're crushing it, Alex. But on the inside, I was like, what am I missing? Like, this can't be all that life actually is. What is it? I've been working my ass off. I've been trying to become better at my craft, but what am I missing? But this mile 40 was an inflection point for you of saying, okay, what am I actually living my life for? What's the impact I'm trying to bring? What's the meaning that I have? So elaborate more on that if you would.
Yeah. Mile 40, and I was talking to this with someone recently, that was the moment where I found my power. I think as humans, we are all superheroes, but we need to get ourselves in situations. And what I mean is, we need to embrace exiting our comfort zone in order to get ourselves in a position to essentially find our cape. Mile 40 was that moment for me. That's when I realized it. And I didn't up until that point in my life. I tell people that growing up under the circumstances that I grew up with, I thought it was normal. Like it's hard to explain cancer to a child. And I never understood it as a child. And I didn't even understand brain surgery when I was getting brain surgery as a 13-year-old. And I thought we all went through this stuff. Right. And in the years to follow, let's call it the next 15 to 17 years between then and mile 40, I was under the impression, I was just starting to unravel, like, hey, these things happen to me, and like, they don't happen to everyone. But what can I do with this, right? Do I have a story to tell? Will anyone care about this story? Should I keep this to myself? And once I got past mile 40 and finished the Ironman, I realized, like, I got to do something. All right. This is my sign, right? This is my sign to do something. So I decided that year to run my very first marathon. I decided to run the New York City Marathon. In order to run, I had to raise money for charity to get my entry. So I decided to raise money for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. It just naturally made sense. And I had to raise a minimum of $3,000. And I remember I wrote down my story on a piece of paper. I called it "The Comeback is Always Greater Than the Setback." That was the title of the story. And I remember being very intentional, especially right on the back of mile 40. I said, I'm not going to tell a biography. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the lessons that I've learned. And I'm going to talk about the tenors that have brought me here. Because I know that, people are going to buy more into something that they can take away. And so I talk about patience, perspective, and purpose, because those are the three things that my parents left me with that I'll never forget and that have guided everything in my life. And I tell this story, and then ultimately I shove it in a drawer and I say to myself, I don't want to share this, because if nobody donates, I'm going to look silly. About a month went by, and I was at the bank at that point, and I was starting to build a relationship with this one managing director that I felt like I can finally maybe move it from professionally focused and share a little bit about my personal life. So I show him this story, And he looks at it and he laughs. And he laughs because he says, Bishoy, you need to make your goal a lot higher. And he gave me $1,000 and he said, go. And I was like, whoa. And that's all I needed. And that brings me back to what I shared about me being a mentor previously was he knew how to light my fire. I didn't know how to do that several years back when I brought that student to Penn Station in the Knicks game. I just was looking for my own gratification. He had nothing to gain from this. He gave me the $1,000. He told me that I need to aim high, and he instilled confidence in me. Something that to that point in my life, I didn't really know that I had, even despite mile 40, because I shoved the story in a drawer. $1,000 turned into 5, turned into 20, turned into 30. Eventually my story got shared with NASDAQ, and they gave me a call and they said, hey, we want to invite you to come ring the closing bell.